It blocked out most of the white light, allowing humans to see this scientist invented a way to see the astral realm. In the 1920s, a scientist by the name of Walter Kilder poured a blue-colored dye called Dicyanine onto a glass screen in hopes of creating night vision goggles. After putting it on, he realized it blocked out most of the white light, allowing humans to see the aura of each other. The chemical was made illegal, but the military were quick to weaponize it, creating the first pair of night vision goggles. However, during the Vietnam War, when this piece of technology was handed out to the helicopter pilots, chaos soon followed. The pilots started firing on each other, claiming that they were firing at demons that were coming to get them, describing the experience as looking into hell. The officer in charge didn't believe it at first, but subsequently every time the goggles were used, similar events took place. Eventually, the officers and pilots were told not to use the goggles ever again, but it got many thinking if this scientist invented a way to see the astral realm. In the 1920s,
now, another thing is that, as you know, Cliff, and as I've understood it, you are from military background, your father or something?
Correct.
Yeah.
Born into it, yes.
Yeah, so you know that world is always decades ahead of the white world. Now, Reagan, I think, was the first started to agitate for a Star Wars program. And that was when, in the early 80s?
Yeah.
So you should assume that he wouldn't have clearing to do that if they weren't ready to launch some. Yeah. So that means that they've had about 30 years to tweak this stuff wherever.
And I know that this stuff exists because my father's role in the military brought him very close to it many times. So my father did 3 tours in the Vietnam War. And in his second tour, he was advanced enough in rank, and he was there, I think, 11 or 12 months. And when he was in country at that point, he's always been a field officer and came up in the military through the Korean War in a battlefield commission. And so, the military likes guys like him, and they let him be in charge of a couple of different projects. One of the projects that he was in charge of at the time was this technology that they introduced into Vietnam that almost brought the war to a standstill. Wow. And this technology was a night vision goggle. But it's not night vision as we have it now, okay? Because the night vision goggle was done in the red spectrum. And so when my father came back from Vietnam...
You mean infrared or...
No, I'll explain.
Ordinary red.
Oh, ordinary red, okay. So instead of seeing... When you look at a night vision goggles now, you see green. Everything is translated into green for you. And human eye sees green, more colors, shades of green than any other color. It's part of our evolution, our need to find food.
So that's clever then.
Correct. But see, here's the thing. It started off as red. And so the night vision goggles were introduced to helicopter pilots and gunnery people in Vietnam. And I won't hesitate I won't guess as to which year it was that they introduced them. But my father was part of this initial experiment with the troops that he commanded. And it was a disaster because the image was presented in red pixels, not green. And because of the technology being used at that time, it created very interesting effects that they could not deal with. So you had some officers that were part of this cadre or this cohort of other officers that were all testing these new technologies for the military that had their troops always use these goggles. And those units became self-destructive. They down in a horrid situation. My father was extremely practical, didn't want to see himself get destroyed in any way, wanted to return and get out. So as soon as he saw what was going on with these goggles, he had his people take them off. And he actually got praise from the military for the way that he dealt with all of this. But the effect was this. A gunner in a helicopter would have no problem using these goggles. and only everything is showing up as a sort of a faint reddish image. And it was true night vision the way we have it now, and even a greater depth, because you could also flip it and get an extra layer that was sort of yellowish that would be heat signatures as well. And they don't have those combined anymore in these goggles. Anyway, the goggles that were presented to the gunners, and my father tells the story of the very first time they're out with them, and they're flying along, and he's in the front of the helicopter with the pilot. And all of a sudden, in a very peaceful area, not anything going on at all, the gunner in his on the starboard side of his helicopter starts firing wildly at their height, not at anything on the ground, but at an area that he was shooting at, and basically causing other helicopters in their little flotilla to have to react. And my father goes on back to the gunner, basically demanding, "What the hell, dude? What are you shooting at?" and the kid is just sweating profusely, and his eyes are just dilated beyond belief. And my dad thought he was dealing with another heroin addict, but this was before it had gotten really bad in Vietnam, and the kid was not exhibiting those kind of symptoms. He was reacting to what he had seen. And he's describing to my father that he was shooting at these basically flying demons that were flying alongside the helicopter. And he knew they were coming to get him because they were gesturing at him and they could see him. And so he reacted, and he started shooting his Bren gun, big 50 caliber slugs at these things, right? And they were flying along right next to the helicopter, so he's firing out directly from the helicopter, and there are other helicopters in the vicinity, so it caused all kinds of problems. And this goes on repeatedly, week after week after week. Every time they try and use these night vision goggles, at some point they encounter monsters, true monsters. Now, officers had been told not to wear these. Okay, the pilots were told not to wear them. But my dad put them on to see what the hell was going on, and to hear him describe it, it was like being in the worst kind of a demonic gothic hell.
Jeez. That
you'd look out at the tops of trees and you'd see these creatures with big wings and claws and everything come flying off of the tops of the trees. But you take the goggles off and there's not even a disturbance in the fog above the canopy of the trees, right?
They're perceiving into an aspect of consciousness.
Correct.
Another dimension.
And it was tied to the red image. As soon as they went to green, all of this kind of stuff disappeared.
Of course. And we don't have time.
Yeah, I know.
Me studying Pythagoreanism and vibrations, we could speak a lot about this, but let's not even go there. But one question: are these connected to the modern night vision goggles people used to see UFOs,
Correct.
Third generation or whatever they're called? Is this the same technology?
It's the same technology. It's just that the translation is done through a different phase alignment, and we're not seeing everything that the goggles could show you.
And they don't connect it to heat signatures either, right? Organic.
They don't do that, and then they also don't do it with a red display. Now, the red aspect of it is interesting because the green display comes from electrons, not photons, okay? And it comes from an electron transmission. Presumably, they were still doing electron transmission. They were just turning it into a red filter.
That keeps it more material.
Exactly. And at this stage, though, in Vietnam, when they introduced them, it was brief. The whole project lasted about 60 days, and then it was all canceled. And the people that...
Of course, it was so impractical.
Correct. I mean, your flotilla is shooting at each other, right?
Suddenly they had a new enemy.
Right,
Don't let them know.
When the bullets didn't bother, right?
Please say you inherited one of these goggles from your father.
No.
Oh, damn.
No, that kind of stuff never happened. My dad was at a level of the military where we had to be very concerned because he used to do CID, internal criminal kind of investigations, right?
Yeah.
And so his clearances and stuff were always checked. So he was a by-the-book kind of a fellow insofar as the military was concerned at that level. I mean, we had our phones tapped, all of that kind of
thing. Okay, because I was ready to book a flight to Northwest America now. I'll just cancel it.
Apparently, we would not want to do this anyway because my father said that the single exposure, and in terms of him describing it,
made you mad?
The single exposure to the goggles that he would put on that one time had an unsettling effect on him for several weeks afterwards.
Right.
And the people that wore the red goggles, the gunners and these kind of people, were unstable at best for months. Many of them were cycled right out of the war as a result of this experience.
That so fits with the whole Vietnam War anyway. You couldn't tell the difference. Everybody went crazy over there.
Right. But here these guys had a real reason for doing it because of the images coming in and the radiation probably.
But, I mean, imagine the energies letting loose in Vietnam at the time. No wonder that was attracting those kind of manifestations.
You're right. Now, maybe the manifestations are there continuously, always around us, but they just don't disturb us.
It's just a strata of reality, right?
Right, because we don't see them, right. And see, so here's the thing. Indeed, if we're looking at automated kinds of systems and so on, there's nothing to say that, we use projectile weapons, but that's not the only way to think of fighting wars and doing protective systems and so on. Some of them may be quite biological and indeed be mechanistic at a deep level.
And you could interact with these apparitions when you had in the Google.
The apparitions could see you and you could see them. That's what caused these people to think they were under attack by these beings and to respond by shooting at them, because the things they were shooting at would point at them to each other and attempt to coordinate something.
Of course, it must have been a big deal because normally we can see them, right?
Correct.
Look at that. That guy can see us.
You're up a couple of hundred, exactly. You're up a couple of 100 feet in the air and this thing's flying along and it's pointing at you and you look around and then it points at you again and you have that mind-to-mind connection. Right. Of course you're going to freak out and start shooting.
Yeah. Mutually, I bet.
Yeah.
And by the way, they are shooting in our atmosphere right now. With an ordinary Googles, people used to UFO sightseeing.
Exactly. And I've got those goggles, and I see a lot of the UFOs and stuff. In my particular area here, I have to look over to the constellation Cassiopeia. And there I see a lot of the activity that's going on. And see, this is why, getting back just briefly to the blue chicken cult and the Corey Good guys, right? I had no problem accepting the idea that there would be a whistleblower that would come out of the secret space program, okay? Because I see the secret space program with the goggles flying around doing stuff. I see the big ships. I see the little triangular ships. I see what, to a military brat, are clearly logistics movements. I also see clearly what are coordinated flotilla training exercises where they're all learning to fly with each other or act in a coordinated fashion. And so I can easily understand that the secret space program exists because I can go out and see it most days that it's not raining around here. And so I was sort of expecting that, well, at some point, somebody's got a blab. But I was thinking that, it would be somewhat realistic and not this...
like the hacker who found evidence that they even have space fleets.
Oh, McKinnon. Yeah, exactly. And they want to put him in jail.
Of course.
Now, so there's a real good indication. This guy comes on out.
Just like the Antarctica missions, you have to go by the reactions. That's the telling part.
Correct. And so here we have the reactions of the military and the government trying to put McKinnon in jail to extradite him from England for a crime that he didn't commit in their country that isn't even really a crime in our country, just because he found stuff he shouldn't have found. And they go on for years about it.
Which makes me think, what ace has Assange got up his sleeve?
Yeah, what's he holding? But it also goes to the other point. If McKinnon, a kid in England with a computer, causes such a brouhaha about the secret space program, then obviously Corey Good is full of shit because no one's trying to arrest him.
They are rewarding him.
Correct. And in fact, the military and everybody, they're not even looking at him. It's like, oh, a crazy fellow. We don't care about him.
He's good for that agenda. He makes a mockery out of this thing. But then
he may even be designed. We don't know. I mean, they may just want him to do that.
Yeah, he may be a psyop, of course.
Exactly.
Many people think so. But here's the thing. We have even more evidence. We have Michael Schratt, that if anyone's listening and in touch with him, please implore him to get in touch with us. He needs to be covered. He's one of the great researchers in the serious secret space program convention research, which was kind of hijacked by the Wilcox Good crowd.
Right.
And Michael Schratt, his evidence is so tight that you can't discuss. It's not a discussion anymore when you go through his material, that we are experimenting with that. But you know, we have so pressed for time, and this isn't a UFO program.
Sure. Yeah,
so
yeah.
I want to move on to scenario 2, and unfortunately, we don't have to spend too much time on scenario 2. There's 1/3 scenario at the end I want to spend more time on.
Well, the decisions made by DOJ about how to staff prosecutions, which U.S. attorney's offices, which counsel to appoint, all those sorts of things are entrusted by regulation to the department.
This is the history of perception glass and how
This scientist
Hey, so I got the goggles in.
This scientist invented a way to see the astral realm. In the 1920s, a scientist by the name of Walter Kilner poured a blue-colored dye called Dicyanine.
Hey, so I got the goggles in.
This scientist invented a way to see the astral realm. In the 1920s, a scientist by This scientist invented a way to see the astral realm. In the 1920s, a scientist by the name of Walter Kilner poured a blue-colored dye called Dicyanine onto a glass screen in hopes of creating night vision goggles. After putting it on, he realized it blocked out most of the white light, allowing humans to see the aura of each other. The chemical was made illegal, but the military were quick to weaponize it, creating the first pair of night vision goggles. However, during the Vietnam War, when this piece of technology was handed out to the helicopter pilots, chaos soon followed. The pilots started firing on each other, claiming that they were firing at demons that were coming to get them, describing the experience as looking into hell. The officer in charge didn't believe it at first, but subsequently every time the goggles were used, similar events took place. Eventually, the officers and pilots were told not to use the goggles ever again, but it got many thinking if this scientist invented.
I saw this story down in Orange.
You scared me.
Because you ride like shit.
I'm sorry.
You're a terrible rider, dude. You're gonna get killed.
This scientist invented a way to see the astral.
Rodney?
Secretary of the Treasury.
There was a gunman who charged 10,000.
You probably remember this guy.
On November 20th night.
Dicyanine is a pigment that is found in some plants and animals, and it is believed to have the ability to absorb light in the blue and green spectrum. There are some conspiracy theories that suggest that dicyanine can be used to create night vision goggles that allow the wearer to see demons and other supernatural entities. According to these theories, dicyanine night vision goggles allow the wearer to see beyond the visible spectrum of light into a realm that is inhabited by demons and other malevolent entities. Some people believe that these goggles can be used to communicate with these entities or to protect oneself from their attacks. One of the most well-known examples of this theory involves helicopter pilots during the Vietnam War. There are many stories of pilots claiming to have seen demons, have fired upon them, and made the wearers go insane. These goggles were the precursor to the yellow-green night vision that is worn now, leading theorists to believe the red goggles were decommissioned due to these events. Dicyanine is a pigment that is found in some plants and animals, and it is believed to have the...
Recently, a video was released online which showed new technology being used inside night vision goggles for the US Army. If you've ever seen the 1987 movie Predator, then these scenes probably look quite familiar to you. To achieve the impressive and highly detailed outline effect that you can see right now, two video feeds are relayed onto the goggles. One feed brings in thermal vision and the second brings in night vision. With careful calibration, the thermal vision is able to achieve edge detection. The good news is, you can actually pick one of these up for yourself. I sourced Reddit and people are saying that the base model is $15,000 and the full kit is $40,000. Free shipping is included though, so it's a real bargain. If you enjoyed this video, please take 2 seconds to leave a like and subscribe.
This is your sign to go.
What does this say right here? Read.
In 1962, that our national motto, "In God We Trust," was adorned above this rostrum. And it.
Dr. Kilner experimented with a chemical called dicyanine. When a dye is placed between two glass planes, called dicyanine. How many of you all ever heard of dicyanine? The dye that allows you to see a person's aura, as well as into the astral realm. If you haven't heard of this, we're about to go down a rabbit hole. In 1911, Dr. Walter Kilner published a medical study proposing the existence of the human atmosphere, also known as the aura. He believed that the aura could have helped with medical diagnosis and prognosis of possible diseases such as cancer. Dr. Kilner experimented with a chemical called dicyanine. When a dye is placed between two glass planes, one has the ability to see into the astral realm along with the aura of any person. Kilner created special goggles which would train the eyes to see light outside the normal visible spectrum because of the dye's ability to block out the white light spectrum. During the Vietnam War, pilots wearing the goggles started firing on each other, claiming they were seeing demons. The military recalled the goggles and the government banned the use of dicyanine. In 2010, the public was able to buy it, but it was banned again. A government chemist tried to obtain the dye, but the chemist found out that his clearance only allowed him to access all other banned substances like LSD, cocaine, but not dicyanine. Now, there's not too much evidence out there that supports how the goggles could help one see into the astral realm, but there's plenty of evidence that supports how the goggles could help diagnose diseases such as cancer, and all you have to do is look at the vision of the mantis shrimp. The mantis shrimp can see polarized light. Their eyes are divided into 3 sections which the shrimp can move independently. Humans have 3 different color receptors while the mantis shrimp has 16. Researchers at the University of Illinois were inspired by the mantis shrimp's sophisticated eyesight that they developed a camera capable of detecting cancer cells early in its development. Researchers stacked multiple silicone photodiodes on top of each other, then combined this with a careful arranged pattern of metallic narrowwires to act as polarization filters. This allowed the camera to see in color and polarized light coming from different directions. When researchers aim polarized light at tissue in the body, the light is scattered by the cell. They found that healthy cells all scatter this light in a similar way, but cancer cells do not. The impact of polarized light shows up earlier on prior to the onset of symptoms and changes that are visible to the naked eye. Earlier prototypes used on mice have successfully revealed where healthy tissues ended and cancer cells begin.
Why are we not funding this?
A few months ago, I was invited to the Walter Russell Museum in Waynesboro, Virginia. As I entered the museum, I was instantly drawn to this picture that mentions how humans' limited vision has blinded them to reality. This picture alone tells a story that connected so many dots. The picture reads and illustrates the undivided white light of the universal God mind. God's universe of space is an intensely luminous, binding white light which no eyes can see. Illuminates alone can see that light through their centers of consciousness located in their pineal glands. The white mind light divided into spectrum pairs. God's white-minded light is dark to man until he divides into spectrum pairs of red and blue lights to screen the white light of God's mind, which centers every creating thing. Man's senses are two-way waves of limited frequencies. They do not respond to vibration below or above a very limited range. Man can extend his range of sense vision by telescope or microscope, but his senses cannot go beyond spectrum effect into mind cause. Now, if you notice at the top of this picture, it talks about extended sense range, mind and senses, 360. And what does 3 plus 6 equal? 9. 9 is the governing number of this realm. What does Tesla talk about? If you want to know the secrets and powers of the universe, you have to know 369. That is tapping into frequencies. Man's limited sense vision has caused them to see an objective universe of many separate, disunited things. When mind vision unfolds to a higher stage in the human race, by increasing awareness of the divine light which centers man, he will then see that everything in the universe is insolubly bound to every other thing. Science will then know that matter is but many focal points of one body. When a man multiplies gravity by casting a stone in the water, his senses see only wave ripples. They do not tell him that those ripples are equatorial ring series of expanding spheres, which are dissipating gravity in the same ratio as it is being multiplied by the falling stone. The same principle applies to all actions. This is, in fact, the very basis of the universal life principle. Walter Russell is literally saying that there is a veil in front of our very own face that we can't see into until we activate our mind's eye. But until then, we will always rely on tools to help us see through the veil. Maybe that's the true reason that those goggles and Dicyanine were banned. But let me know your thoughts. Until next time, YouTube.
Tap into the freak.